Shocking Trump charity scandal exposed. Melania's redemption speech backfires. What if I told you that one of the most controversial figures in modern history had a secret so shocking, it could rewrite everything we thought we knew about him? Tonight, at the Grand Horizon Hotel, a charity gala hosted by Melania Trump turned into a battlefield of secrets, lies, and redemption. What started as a night of glamour and goodwill quickly spiraled into a jaw-dropping exposé that left everyone speechless. From hidden documents to a journalist's downfall, this story has it all: betrayal, transformation, and a twist you'll never see coming. But before we dive into this explosive tale, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because you won't want to miss what happens next. Trust me, this is one story you'll be talking about for weeks. In the heart of Chicago, beneath a sky streaked with fading twilight, the Grand Horizon Hotel stood as an imposing silhouette against the urban landscape. Once a symbol of opulence and success, it now bore silent witness to the rise and fall of fortunes, a fitting backdrop for what was about to unfold within its gilded halls. Tonight, this grand venue hosted a gala event that promised not only glamour but also redemption. It was organized by Melania Trump, whose dedication to charitable causes had earned her both admiration and skepticism in equal measure. Donald Trump sat alone in a dim corner of the ballroom, his presence almost overshadowed by the vibrant chatter of guests milling around him. His once imposing figure seemed diminished, shoulders slightly slumped under the weight of years past and decisions made. The man who had once dominated headlines with brash declarations and audacious ventures now found himself relegated to whispers, some sympathetic, others cruel. Reporters circled like vultures, their cameras flashing intermittently, capturing every fleeting moment of discomfort on his face. Yet amidst the cacophony of voices, one thought lingered heavy in his mind. How did I end up here? Melania moved gracefully through the crowd, exchanging polite smiles and firm handshakes with dignitaries, philanthropists, and socialites alike. Her elegance was undeniable, yet there was a fragility beneath the surface that only those closest to her could perceive. She carried herself with poise, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease, a reflection of the pressure mounting upon her shoulders. This evening wasn't just another fundraiser. It was a chance to prove something, to reclaim dignity after countless accusations hurled at her family name. As she prepared to take the stage, her heart raced faster than ever before. The room buzzed with anticipation as the MC announced Melania's impending speech. A hush fell over the audience, though murmurs persisted among some skeptics seated near the back. Among them was Marcus Kane, a young journalist whose career had been irrevocably altered when Donald Trump publicly fired him during a contentious press conference 5 years prior. For Marcus, tonight represented more than mere journalism. It was personal. He leaned forward, pen poised above his notebook, ready to pounce at the first sign of hypocrisy or misstep. As Melania approached the podium, her heels clicked softly against the marble floor. She adjusted the microphone, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Before speaking, she glanced briefly toward where Donald sat quietly in the shadows. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, and in that instant, Melania felt a surge of determination wash over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them head-on. Not for herself, but for the legacy they sought to build together. "Good evening," Melania began, her voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with each word. "Thank you all for being here tonight. We gather not merely to celebrate generosity, but to reaffirm our commitment to uplifting those less fortunate." Her words resonated throughout the hall, drawing nods of approval from many attendees. But lurking beneath the surface were doubts, questions whispered behind closed doors regarding the authenticity of their intentions. Meanwhile, Donald watched intently from afar, observing how Melania handled herself with grace even amid scrutiny. In that moment, he realized something profound. While he may have built empires and amassed wealth beyond imagination, none of it mattered compared to the strength and resilience displayed by the woman standing before him. For the first time in years, guilt gnawed at his conscience, not because of failures in business, but because of the pain he might have caused someone so dear. As Melania continued her address, detailing stories of children rescued from homelessness and families given new beginnings, Donald allowed himself to reflect on the path that brought him here. From towering skyscrapers to bankruptcy courts, his journey had been tumultuous, marked by victories and defeats alike. Yet through it all, Melania remained steadfast, a constant source of support despite the turmoil surrounding them. But tonight, as the world watched, both Donald and Melania knew they faced perhaps the greatest challenge yet, proving that redemption is possible, that no matter how far one falls, there's always a chance to rise again. And as Melania concluded her heartfelt speech, receiving applause from the gathered crowd, Donald resolved silently to stand beside her, shoulder to shoulder, as they embarked on this next chapter of their lives. Little did anyone know, however, that events unfolding within these walls would soon reveal truths far deeper than any headline could capture. Secrets long buried would come to light, alliances tested, and ultimately, a transformation neither Donald nor Melania anticipated. But for now, under the soft glow of chandeliers and surrounded by strangers turned supporters, hope flickered brightly, a beacon guiding them forward into uncertain waters. And so the night unfolded, setting the stage for revelations yet to come. Melania stood at the podium, her hands gripping the edges tightly as she prepared to deliver the most important speech of her life. The room was eerily silent, save for the occasional cough or shuffle from the audience. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drumbeat, each thud echoing the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus despite the sea of faces staring back at her, some curious, others judgmental. "Ladies and gentlemen," Melania began, her voice soft but steady, "tonight we gather not only to raise funds but also to raise awareness about an issue close to my heart, the plight of homeless children." As she spoke, memories flooded her mind of the countless young faces she had encountered during her visits to shelters across the country. Faces marked by hardship yet illuminated by hope. These children deserve more than just a roof over their heads. They deserve a future filled with promise and opportunity. Her words resonated deeply with many in attendance, drawing nods of approval and murmurs of agreement. Yet, beneath the surface, skepticism lingered. Whispers spread through the crowd like ripples in a pond, growing louder with each passing second. "Is this genuine?" one guest muttered to another. "Or is it just another PR stunt?" Another chimed in. "How can someone who's married to Donald Trump claim to care about the less fortunate?" Donald watched from his seat in the corner, his jaw clenched tight as he heard the murmurs drift toward him. He knew what they were saying, that Melania's efforts were merely a facade, a way to cleanse the family name tarnished by his past misdeeds. But tonight something felt different. For the first time he wasn't consumed by anger or defensiveness. Instead he felt a pang of guilt, a recognition of the pain his actions might have caused others, including his own wife. As Melania continued, her voice faltered slightly. "We must come together." She paused, taking a moment to compose herself, to create a world where no child goes without love, care, or shelter. The vulnerability in her tone didn't go unnoticed. Several attendees exchanged glances, their expressions softening ever so slightly. But not everyone was moved. Marcus Kane, seated near the back, leaned forward with a smirk playing on his lips. The young journalist had been waiting for this moment for years, in fact. Fired by Donald during a high-profile press conference 5 years ago, Marcus harbored a deep-seated resentment toward the former tycoon. Tonight he saw an opportunity to exact revenge, not just against Donald but against the entire Trump dynasty. When Melania finished her speech and stepped away from the podium, applause erupted throughout the room. It was polite, almost perfunctory, but enough to mask the tension brewing beneath the surface. That was until Marcus rose to his feet, microphone in hand. His piercing gaze locked onto Melania, who froze mid-step, sensing trouble. "Mrs. Trump," Marcus began, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What a touching speech. Truly inspiring. But forgive me if I find it hard to believe that someone married to Donald Trump genuinely cares about the underprivileged." A ripple of unease swept through the audience as heads turned toward Melania, awaiting her response. She stood there momentarily stunned, unsure how to respond. Before she could muster a reply, Marcus pressed on, his voice rising with each word. "Isn't it true that your husband's business practices have destroyed countless lives? Families evicted, dreams shattered, all for the sake of profit. And now, suddenly, you're here pretending to be the savior of the downtrodden." The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Melania's face flushed red, her composure wavering. She opened her mouth to speak but found herself at a loss for words. Behind her, Donald sat motionless, his eyes fixed intently on the scene unfolding before him. For the first time he truly understood the burden Melania carried. The constant scrutiny, the endless criticism, the loneliness of being a public figure married to a controversial man. But then, something unexpected happened. From the shadows, Donald slowly stood up, his towering presence commanding attention. The room grew quieter still as all eyes turned toward him. Gone was the brash billionaire of old. In his place stood a man transformed, sober, reflective, and uncharacteristically humble. "Marcus," Donald said, his voice calm yet firm. "You're right. I've made mistakes, big ones. Mistakes that hurt people. Mistakes I regret deeply." The admission caught everyone off guard, including Marcus, whose smug expression faltered slightly. "But my wife, she doesn't deserve to be attacked because of my failures. She's done nothing but try to make a difference in this world. If anyone deserves credit for turning our lives around, it's her." Marcus sneered, unwilling to let go of his advantage. "Oh please. You think a few kind words will absolve you of everything? Do you really believe anyone here buys into this sudden change of heart?" Donald's eyes narrowed, but instead of lashing out, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick folder. Flipping it open, he held it up for the crowd to see. "This," he declared, "is evidence of something far more insidious than anything I've ever done. Evidence that points directly to you, Marcus Kane." Gasps rippled through the audience as Donald proceeded to outline the contents of the folder. Documents detailing how Kane Holdings had been exploiting loopholes to buy low-cost properties, evicting thousands of low-income families in the process. "Who's the real villain here, Marcus?" Donald asked, his voice dripping with disdain. "The guy who admits his faults and tries to make amends, or the one hiding behind a mask of righteousness while profiting from other people's misery?" Marcus's face paled as the truth dawned on him. The tables had turned, and there was nowhere left to run. The crowd erupted into murmurs of disbelief, their opinions shifting rapidly. Melania watched from the sidelines, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. For the first time she saw a side of Donald she hadn't known existed. A side willing to confront his flaws and stand up for what's right. And as the drama unfolded, the seeds of transformation began to take root. Not just for Donald and Melania, but for everyone present in that room. The room was electric with tension as Donald stood at the center of attention, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. Gone was the brash billionaire who once dominated headlines with arrogance and bravado. In his place stood a man transformed, sober, reflective, and unyieldingly determined to expose the truth. "Marcus Kane," Donald continued, his tone measured yet laced with conviction. "You've spent years building your reputation as a crusader for justice, exposing corruption wherever you find it. But what happens when the tables turn? What happens when the one pointing fingers is the real villain?" Donald paused, letting his words sink in. The audience leaned forward, their collective breath held in anticipation. Marcus's face had turned pale, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he realized the trap closing around him. He opened his mouth to speak but found himself speechless, a rare occurrence for someone so accustomed to wielding words as weapons. Donald reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out another folder, thicker than the first. Its weight seemed symbolic, carrying within it the potential to dismantle everything Marcus had worked for. Flipping it open, Donald began reading aloud, each word falling like a hammer strike. According to these documents, Kane Holdings has been systematically exploiting low-income neighborhoods across the Midwest, buying properties at rock-bottom prices, evicting families without warning, and then flipping them for astronomical profits. Over the past decade, this practice has displaced over 10,000 individuals, men, women, and children forced onto the streets because of greed. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the gravity of Donald's revelations sank in. Faces that moments ago had been skeptical now wore expressions of disbelief and outrage. Melania watched from the sidelines, her heart swelling with pride as she witnessed her husband taking responsibility not just for his own actions, but also for uncovering the injustices committed by others. But Donald wasn't done. He turned his gaze directly toward Marcus, his eyes burning with intensity. "And let's not forget the coup de grace, the Sterling Group scandal. You've painted me as the villain, haven't you? The ruthless businessman who destroyed lives without remorse. Well, here's the truth. It wasn't me. It was you." The room erupted into chaos as Donald revealed the final piece of evidence. A signed affidavit detailing how Marcus Kane had orchestrated the entire scheme to bring down Sterling Group. Using inside information and leveraging connections within the financial sector, Marcus had manipulated market conditions to force Donald into bankruptcy, all while maintaining his image as an upstanding journalist. "You see," Donald explained, his voice rising above the din, "this wasn't about business. This was personal. You wanted revenge for being fired 5 years ago. So, you plotted, you schemed, and you succeeded, at least temporarily. But tonight the truth comes to light. And the question remains, who's the real villain here?" Marcus stumbled backward, his composure crumbling under the weight of exposure. "It's all lies," he shouted, though his protestations fell flat against the mountain of evidence stacked against him. Some attendees whispered among themselves, their trust in Marcus shattered. Others simply stared, unable to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the reality unfolding before them. As the commotion subsided, Melania stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. She addressed the crowd, her voice steady and unwavering. "Tonight, we came here to talk about helping those in need. Instead, we uncovered a darker side of our society, one where power and profit take precedence over compassion and humanity. Let this be a lesson to us all. Before pointing fingers, we must examine our own actions and motivations." Her words resonated deeply, drawing applause from many in attendance. Even Donald, standing beside her, felt a renewed sense of purpose. For years he had worn his flaws like armor, using them to shield himself from vulnerability. But tonight, he faced them head-on, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire for change. As the gala drew to a close, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. What had started as a tense confrontation ended with a newfound solidarity among the guests. Conversations buzzed with ideas for collaboration, plans to expand outreach programs, and commitments to transparency. Melania's vision for making a difference had ignited a spark that promised to grow into something far greater. But amidst the celebrations, Donald couldn't help but reflect on the journey ahead. Redemption wouldn't come easily. It would require effort, humility, and perseverance. Yet, for the first time, he felt hopeful, not because of wealth or status, but because of the love and support of the woman by his side. And as the lights dimmed and the last guests departed, Donald turned to Melania, his expression softening. "Thank you," he said simply, his gratitude shining through. Melania smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We're in this together," she replied, her voice filled with warmth and understanding. For both Donald and Melania, tonight marked more than just a victory. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, one built on truth, integrity, and the unwavering belief that even the most broken relationships can be rebuilt. As the dust settled from Donald's revelations, a profound silence enveloped the grand ballroom of the Grand Horizon Hotel. Marcus Kane stood frozen, his face drained of color as the weight of his exposed schemes crushed him. The once confident journalist who had entered the gala with a mission to expose Donald Trump now found himself under scrutiny, his reputation shattered in an instant. The crowd, initially divided between skepticism and admiration, began to shift its focus. Whispers filled the air, but this time they carried tones of disbelief and anger. Not toward Donald or Melania, but toward Marcus. "How could he do this?" one attendee muttered, shaking her head in dismay. Another chimed in, "This changes everything." Donald remained at the center of attention, though his demeanor was markedly different from the man who had walked into the room earlier that evening. Gone was the brash billionaire. In his place stood a figure humbled by truth and driven by purpose. He glanced toward Melania, who offered him a small, encouraging smile. In that moment their connection deepened, an unspoken understanding passing between them that transcended words. But the story wasn't over yet. As Marcus fumbled for an explanation, his voice trembling with desperation, a voice rose above the murmurs, a woman seated near the front row. Her tone was firm yet measured, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Enough," she declared, standing up to address the room. "We came here tonight not to witness a spectacle but to make a difference. What we've seen instead is a reminder of why transparency matters." Her words struck a chord among the attendees, many of whom nodded in agreement. Slowly the atmosphere shifted again, this time toward unity and resolve. People began discussing how to channel their energy into meaningful action, rather than dwelling on past grievances. It was clear that the events of the evening had sparked something powerful within them. Meanwhile, Melania stepped forward once more, her presence commanding respect. "Tonight has been challenging, but it has also been enlightening," she began. Her voice steadied despite the emotional weight of the situation. "We have uncovered truths that demand accountability, and not just from those on stage but from all of us as individuals. Let this be a turning point, not just for my family, but for everyone committed to creating a better future." Her speech resonated deeply, drawing applause from the audience. Even Donald felt moved, recognizing the strength and resilience that defined his wife. For years he had underestimated her capacity to lead, not just in charity work, but in navigating the complexities of public life. Tonight, she proved herself not only as a partner but as a beacon of hope. Yet, amidst the newfound solidarity, there was still work to be done. Marcus Kane, visibly shaken, attempted to defend himself, but his arguments fell flat against the mountain of evidence stacked against him. One by one, guests turned away, leaving him isolated and defeated. Finally, unable to bear the pressure, he bolted from the room, abandoning his microphone as he fled. Its metallic clatter echoed through the hall, symbolizing the collapse of his carefully constructed facade. In the aftermath, Donald and Melania exchanged a glance, both aware of the transformation taking place, not just in their relationship, but in the hearts of those around them. They knew that tonight marked more than just a victory. It was a catalyst for change. Together, they resolved to build upon this momentum, using their platform to advocate for causes greater than themselves. And so, as the night drew to a close, the couple retreated to a quiet corner of the ballroom, reflecting on the journey ahead. Melania rested her hand gently on Donald's arm, her touch conveying comfort and encouragement. "We've come so far," she whispered, her voice tinged with emotion. "But there's still much to do." Donald nodded, his expression softening. "With you by my side," he replied, "I believe we can achieve anything." As the lights dimmed and the last guests departed, the air seemed lighter, charged with possibility. The Grand Horizon Hotel, once a monument to failure and hubris, now stood as a testament to redemption and renewal. And for Donald and Melania, the road ahead promised challenges, yes, but also opportunities to redefine themselves and leave a lasting legacy. For in the end, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about growing, about learning to face one's flaws, embrace vulnerability, and strive for something greater than oneself. As dawn broke over Chicago, casting golden rays across the cityscape, Donald and Melania stood side by side on a stage bathed in sunlight. Behind them loomed the newly inaugurated New Horizons Center, a symbol of hope, renewal, and transformation. Built on the very land where Donald had once planned to construct yet another luxury skyscraper, this center now served as a sanctuary for homeless children and their families. The grand opening ceremony drew a crowd that included not only dignitaries and philanthropists, but also ordinary citizens whose lives had been touched by the Trump's newfound commitment to social justice. As Melania prepared to cut the ceremonial ribbon, she turned to Donald, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We've come so far," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the murmur of the audience. Donald smiled softly, his hand resting gently on hers. For years he had defined success through wealth and power, measuring his worth in dollars and deals. But tonight, standing beside Melania under the warm glow of morning light, he realized that true success lay elsewhere, in the bonds they had forged, the lives they had touched, and the redemption they had found together. "Together," he replied, his tone filled with gratitude and humility. With those simple words, Melania stepped forward, scissors in hand, and snipped the ribbon with a flourish. Cheers erupted from the crowd, echoing through the air like a symphony of hope and renewal. On the wall behind them, a plaque bore the inscription, "Family is not what you hold on to, but what you rebuild." The words resonated deeply with everyone present, serving as a reminder that even the most fractured relationships could be mended with effort, patience, and love. Later, during a private moment away from the cameras and applause, Donald and Melania sat together on a bench overlooking the center's playground. Children laughed and played nearby, their joyous voices filling the space between them. Melania leaned her head against Donald's shoulder, her expression peaceful yet reflective. "I never doubted you," she said finally, breaking the silence. "Even when things seemed impossible, I believed we could change." Donald looked at her, his heart swelling with emotion. "I didn't always deserve your faith," he admitted, his voice thick with sincerity. "But having you by my side made all the difference. You taught me that strength isn't about domination. It's about resilience. And love." Melania smiled, her gaze softening. "And you taught me that mistakes don't define us. What matters is how we choose to move forward." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of a young boy, no older than 10, clutching a drawing in his small hands. He hesitated briefly before handing it to Melania. "This is for you," he said shyly. "Thank you for giving me a place to call home." Tears welled up in Melania's eyes as she unfolded the paper, revealing a colorful depiction of a house surrounded by trees and smiling faces. She knelt down to meet the boy's gaze, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for trusting us," she replied, pulling him into a gentle hug. Watching from a distance, Donald felt a profound sense of fulfillment wash over him. This wasn't just about rebuilding a reputation or salvaging a legacy. It was about creating something meaningful, something lasting, something that would outlive them both. As the day wore on, the couple mingled with guests, sharing stories and listening intently to the concerns of those who sought their help. Each interaction reinforced their belief in the power of compassion and collaboration. By evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Donald and Melania retreated to a quiet corner of the center. Hand in hand, they reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from the heights of success to the depths of despair, and back again. Along the way, they had learned hard lessons about pride, responsibility, and redemption. But more importantly, they had discovered the beauty of vulnerability and the strength found in unity. "We did it," Melania said softly, her voice carrying a note of wonder. "We really did it." Donald squeezed her hand, his smile warm and genuine. "Not alone," he corrected. "With each other. And with everyone who believed in our mission." And as the first stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the couple stood together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For they knew that while the road to redemption was long and arduous, it was also one of infinite possibility. Together they would continue building, not just homes but futures, for those who needed them most. And so, beneath the watchful gaze of the New Horizons Center, their story came full circle, a testament to the transformative power of love, forgiveness, and second chances. And just when you thought the story was over, think again. What happens when the truth isn't enough? What happens when the people you trust the most turn out to be your greatest enemies? This is just the beginning. The next chapter of this saga is even more shocking, and you won't believe who's involved. Stay tuned because the secrets don't stop here. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because the truth is coming, and you'll want to be the first to know. See you in the next video.